Good morning and welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR. I am joined this morning by real estate broker and HAR instructor Chance Brown. Welcome back to the program, Chance.
Hey, good morning, Christina. Thank you. It's exciting to be back.
Yes, I'm very excited to have you back. I think this is maybe your second or third appearance on our program, and we always enjoy the time you carve out for us.
Nope, it's going to be a good one and an appropriate topic.
Yes, very appropriate topic, and we want to jump right into it. But before we do, in case there's any members who aren't acquainted with you yet, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Yep, my name is Chance Brown. I'm the broker for CB&A Realtors here in Houston, and we also just opened our first office in Austin. I have had the privilege of serving realtors in a number of different capacities at both the local, state, and national levels, and currently doing some work with the Real Estate Commission to help to help realtors throughout the state of Texas. And I also host a podcast, which just so happens, shameless plug, is going to be starring the wonderful Christina Schaefer this Wednesday at 10 a.m. It's called Top 5 with Chance Brown. So if you've ever thought about starting your own podcast, Christina's going to teach you how.
Yeah, it was fun to be your guest on your podcast. So I'll look forward to hearing the end product. So thank you
That's
again for
right.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about how to help your clients and customers with their tax protesting, which we know is a very hot topic. We had a lot of members really excited about this program, so we're excited to hear from you about it today.
Yeah, so it's a really hot topic right now because of some legislation that was passed. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But what
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to start with, if you're okay, is kind of a quick history lesson on the homestead in general, because I think that as practitioners, we focus so much on the tax benefit of the homestead exemption. And where we somewhat miss the boat is there's a lot more to the homestead exemption than just a tax savings.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go way, way back to when Texas was a country, and I think, your husband and I are like the way too proud of Texas guys in the room. If we go back to the Republic of Texas in 1839, Texas was actually the first government in North America to put in place a homestead protection. And really, what it boiled down to was you had a bunch of land that was written on Mexican land grants. You had a bunch of land that had been written in Spanish land grants. And it was recognizing all of those land grants under the auspices of the newly created General Land Office in the Republic of Texas. When Texas joined the United States in 1845, they adopted that as not just statute, but actually as part of the state constitution. And there were several what were then considered to be Western states, like Wisconsin, not so Western, but it was at the time, that also adopted similar parts to their constitution. There were 5 or 6 states. And since then, we've seen it become pretty widely adopted throughout the United States. But the idea before we ever started talking about how property taxes were affected with homestead was the homestead was there to protect your property from being taken by creditors if you fell on hard times. And those protections still exist today. And so it's important when we talk about homestead exemptions with our clients that we're not just talking about it from a tax saving standpoint. Yes, that's the most immediate and people feel it in their pocketbooks, but it also protects them from lawsuits and different creditors being able to take their primary homestead away from them in the case of an economic downturn, job loss, things like that. Now, it doesn't keep you from being foreclosed upon or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody were to sue you, stuff like that, there are protections there with the homestead that are equally as important as the property tax reduction. So there's our homestead lesson for the day, our homestead history lesson for the day.
Homestead history lesson for the day. I love
That's
it.
right.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for that. And that's why we brought you on, because we know that you know this inside and out. So diving into this year, why does it seem like so many homeowners had an increase in property tax?
Well, the really simple answer is because they did. That's the real simple answer. The more complicated answer is there are some nuances to the way that our tax system works. And when you look at a year when we had the kind of sales volume like what we had in 2021, combined with the increase in sales prices that we saw in 2021, it really becomes kind of a recipe for the mayhem we're seeing in that property tax market right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so while we'll talk again about the legislation that passed that kind of changed how this works, if you look at how but prior to January 1st, 2022, how the mechanism of assessing property taxes and paying property taxes worked in conjunction with your homestead is taxes are collected in arrears. Same with our mortgage, right? When we pay our mortgage on the first of the month, we're not paying for the month to come.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do when we rent. We're paying for the month that just happened. And so the same thing happens when we pay our tax bill. When we pay our tax bill in January or December or whenever you pay your tax bill, you're actually paying for that year before. You're not paying for the year to come. And so prior to January 1, 2022, which changed things, if you purchased a home in let's say, calendar year 2021, you would file for your homestead exemption in 2022 before the end of April, and that would affect your taxes the following year, right? When you paid your tax bill. The problem with that is we saw this huge sales volume. We saw this huge increase in sales prices in 2021, and it was the last year where we sort of saw this delayed effectiveness of the tax exemption part. And so what you saw was people who had property tax exemptions before come off, and when they come off, there's not that 10% cap. And so when we have our property homestead exemption in place, we have a 10% cap on how far that value can come up. But when that comes off, there's no cap. And so we just saw prices rise. We saw them go way, way up really, really quick. And it just is kind of unfortunate that, the legislation that we passed that went into effect January 1st is great legislation. But there had to be a cutoff date for the old way of doing things. And it just so happened that it was in a year where we saw enormous sales price appreciation coupled with so many sales.
Okay. Well, that makes
sense. People getting huge tax bills.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell us about that legislation that went into effect January 1st.
Yeah, so, this is going to be my shameless plug for TreePack. So if you haven't made your investment in TreePack, now is the time to do that. Because it's the work of TreePack and the work of the Texas Realtors Governmental Affairs Department, local volunteers on the ground and at the state level that really are the driving force behind these reforms that we see when it comes to legislation. And the legislation that went in on January 1st essentially just says, hey, as soon as you buy a home in the state of Texas, if it's your primary residence and you file for homestead protection, it goes into effect immediately. So there's no longer that year delay. You can have it affect your taxes right out of the gate. And so the idea was it was going to provide some property relief. And I believe that once you get into 2023 and 2024 and beyond, and this becomes the norm, you will not see the craziness that we're seeing this year because those caps will immediately go into place and you won't have those huge escalations, with one exception. And it's an important exception, and it's important that our members know how to address this with their clients, and that exception is new construction. So with new construction, the rule with homestead exemption is they're gonna appraise the property as of January 1. So if the home was just a blank lot on January 1, that's what they're going to tax at. And so we need to make sure that we're having a conversation with our clients, because here's what happens. Let's say, Christina, you and Billy, you go buy a brand new home that 4 months ago was a dirt lot. You close in October, you file for your homestead exemption, and it immediately goes into effect. Well, the tax district is going to have just the value of that lot. They're not going to have the value of the home. So this plays into a potentially bad situation on two different fronts. Number one is, if you're paying your property taxes out of pocket, great, good for you, pay that, woohoo. But you're not going to get that immediate relief until the home is complete and they can assess the property as completed. But where we tend to see real problems happen is when somebody is escrowing their taxes. Because what's going to happen is The following year, the mortgage company is going to collect based on the taxes that were just paid.
Right.
So it's going to be assessed at a totally different value because it's now a completed home. And let's just say it's a $300,000 home and we've got a 3% tax rate. Well, they're collecting on a $15,000 lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be $9,000 in taxes. There's going to be a huge gap. And so what we see is the following January, the mortgage company says, well, wait a second. We were way, way, way below when we went to pay this bill. Either A, you owe us like $8,500, and we're going to up your monthly payment to cover this tax deficit, or we're going to just up your monthly payment, the tax deficit, plus a catch-up for last year. And so now we see this huge disparity in what people are paying in the monthly bill. Maybe what was affordable is no longer affordable, and it just puts our clients in a bad situation. So we need to be having conversations that they either need to, right out of the gate, be escrowing for the purchase price or a high percentage thereof, or in the January following, we need to have a note in place to reach out and have them to readjust their escrows based on that value.
Well, that is great advice. So thank you for that. We have a few questions that have already come in for you, and of course, I have a lot more questions for you as well. But let's just take a look here. Joyce was saying, can you please explain the over 65 exemption, how it directly affects homeowners' property taxes, and is there a difference between the benefits in Harris County and Fort Bend County?
The answer is no. There shouldn't be a difference. Over 65 is once you reach over 65, it freezes the school taxes and it provides a larger benefit. Mm-hmm. So the way the exemption works, for people who aren't familiar with the inner workings of it, is let's just say, using our previous example, that we have a $300,000 house. Well, based on the type of exemption that you have, you just reduce that $300,000 by a certain number of dollars. Mm. Right, so it may be $40,000, it may be $100,000, it may be, if you're a disabled soldier, it could be even way more, or surviving spouse. There are a number of different types of exemptions, and you're just reducing that appraised value by a certain amount of money, and then the taxes are collected on this lower value. Mm-hmm. And so in the case of our seniors, it freezes their tax rate, especially for schools, which usually makes up somewhere between 50 and 55% of somebody's tax bill, in some places more. But it also lowers that taxable amount considerably so that they're not priced out of their home over time, especially as they go onto a fixed income.
Okay, very good. We had a couple questions that came in from Nishan. The first question was, do you have price increase index for Harris, Fort Bend, and Brazoria County?
I do not.
Okay. He also said, he also asked, when the appraisal district assesses a 35% increase, can a homeowner use the price index to decrease the assessed value? Is it acceptable to HCAD or Fort Bend CAD? Thanks.
Yeah, so I think that actually leads into one of our questions, is sort of getting into that process of the answer to that is probably, and I say probably kind of tongue in cheek, because you really never know what you get until you get into the process, and there are a number of different ways to protest your taxes. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is, the more information that you can present in that protest process, which would include certainly indexing based on how, if the average value of a home in Harris County went up 22% and you got a 35% increase, then I would absolutely use that data to show, hey, you over appraised my property, lower it. If, for example, you could get it more granular and say, in this neighborhood, the index was 25% and you put me at 35%, then 100% I would put that in there. And if you're not familiar with the market viewer tool at texasrealestate.com, it's a great way to easily look up community data like that.
Okay, very good. So we're getting a lot of questions coming in for different counties. Before we get into all that, I think there's some general pieces of knowledge that you can share that would probably affect every county. But let me just ask the basic question here. Do you recommend that realtors reach out to past clients to offer help?
In general, yes. So I'd like, if I can, I want to break this down into two different sections.
Sure.
Section one would be a kind of you should do this no matter what,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then section two is maybe if you're good at it, if you feel comfortable with it. But the section one is real simple. If you've got somebody who buys a home in any calendar year, whether you're using a CRM, whether you're just keeping paper files, whether you have a transaction management software, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
just flag that. And then in January, it's just a really great, let me start the year out touching base with all my past clients from the year before and provide them with a copy of their closing disclosure, right? And just in doing that, there may be some tax deductible fees, and we're not talking about property taxes here. We're just talking about income
Mm-hmm.
taxes. There may be some property tax or some income tax deductible fees and things like that, whether they bought or sold. And if they sold, the closing disclosure is really the only proof that they have that they paid property taxes, that prorated portion,
Mm-hmm.
on their previous home. So we want to make sure that they are equipped to reduce their income tax as much as they can. And it's just a great way to start the year with, hey, just want to make sure that you have this.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you give it to your tax preparer, CPA, whatever. Right. So to me, you kind of have to do that. That's a basic minimum level of service type of thing in my book. When it comes to actually helping people with tax protests, I would say, sure, if you feel comfortable doing that.
Okay.
We've got agents in our brokerage who it's a huge part of the service that they provide to their
Mm-hmm.
past clients. So much so that, they spend month and a half now that their businesses have grown, uh, just looking at comps, pulling protest value packages for their clients to go and be able to effectively protest their taxes. If it's not something you feel comfortable with, be the source of the source.
Mm-hmm.
Recommend them out to one of these companies that does this. If they're looking for anything specific, sure, look it up in the MLS and help them out. But if you're not really comfortable in that world, either A, get more comfortable, go
Mm-hmm.
watch what happens, go with one of your clients when they protest their taxes, talk to somebody in your office maybe that is really, really strong in that and kind of learn what they do. And then if you feel comfortable doing it, sure, why not?
Okay. I feel like I specifically hear this question all the time for realtors, and that is, so let's say you are helping somebody, maybe a friend, family member, past client, somebody reached out to you and they want some help. What do you do when you can't find any comps?
Yeah, and that's a real struggle this year. I mean, I can tell you personal experience. My mother-in-law reached out to me, and you always want to try to keep your mother-in-law happy, right?
Absolutely.
Um, and there were no comps that supported me being able to try to help her protest taxes. So,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of notes on here. Even if you don't have comps to support the protest, I still highly recommend people protest. Like Nishan said, use the price indexes. Look at the neighborhood. It's kind of a weird thing because you really want to make your home look terrible compared to everybody else, right? Normally you're like, I want to have pride of ownership, I want to make my home look great, all of these things. And in this case, it's completely the opposite. It's like, how trashy can I make my house look so that they'll lower that property value and save me some
Right.
money? And so, I would look at whatever kind of data you can get. If your house doesn't have as fancy flooring, take pictures of that carpet that's got, your kids' stains all over it or whatever it
Sure.
is and compare it to somebody else's fancy wood tile looking floor or whatever you can do to make your house look not as nice and use those things to try and lower that value and argue your point. Because even if you can't get it lowered to the place that you want, if you get it lowered somewhat, it does two things. Number one, obviously it saves you some money, but it really sets the precedent moving forward that if you continuously protest, you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get as much tacked on every single year.
Okay. Kind of a follow up question to that. Tiffany said the comps that we are pulling are for the previous year, correct? So, what time frame should you be looking at for this?
Yes, Tiffany, correct. So, in that year where they bought the house, that's really what you want. Because again, going back to the property was appraised as of January 1. Uh, and so, anything that would support a lower value as of January 1 is great.
Okay. So let's say you've decided you're going to help somebody out here. What do you suggest when you're trying to guide a client or customer through this process of tax protesting?
So it depends on the county, right? And each county it's a similar way of protesting because that's really laid out statutorily. But not all counties are created equal. And so, let's use Harris County for example. There's a way for you to go on and do an online protest, and then you can actually go and visit somebody and try to get a protest, and then there's a hearing, right? I have never gotten so involved in this that I've gotten to the hearing phase, but I've gotten past the online because usually you don't get the answer that you want. Sometimes, but usually not. What I found is when I go and actually have the one-on-one, if I take enough data with me, I usually get something that works for me. And so that's usually the advice that I give is at least if they say no or you're not happy with what you get in the online protest is take yourself down there and go. I've got to do one this year for a piece of property that we own it's not homesteaded, so we don't have that 10% cap, and my taxes went up 400%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we're going to go protest the heck out of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there anything specific that, homeowners should say or not say if they get to that point where they're showing up in person to protest?
Yeah, I think again, we go back to that, let me try to make my house ugly kind of thing. And that's really what we're trying to do is not build up our home. Also, don't be rude. Don't be argumentative to the point where it's abrasive. Stand your ground.
Sure.
But don't be abrasive. These are people who are doing a job, They're not there to try to get over on you. They're not there to try to take advantage of you. They're just people who are doing their job. So be thorough in the information that you bring to the table. Okay. Stand behind it and make sure that you're confident when you're talking about it. Don't oversell your home, but don't be abrasive. Be kind.
Yeah.
These people literally sit there and get beat up all day, every day for a living.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So again, a lot of questions coming in. We're going to get to as many as we possibly can. Let's start with, we have a lot of questions for different counties. So just generally, Chance, where do you find the information for each specific county? I would imagine on that county's website.
On that county's appraisal district website. So there is state law that every appraisal district must have a, let me rephrase that. There are 254 counties in Texas. There are 253 appraisal districts in Texas because two counties up in the Panhandle share an appraisal district, mainly because they have more cows than humans in those two. That's not a joke, actually.
I know.
There are 15 counties in Texas that have more cows than humans. But those two share an appraisal district. And so there's 253 appraisal districts. Each of them has a website. And so, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call, go on their website and see what needs to happen. They're usually very, very helpful and forthcoming if you're nice about it.
Okay. And I popped a question up on the screen from Lydia. Can you share if there are any changes in Montgomery County? We got similar questions for Fort Bend, for Harris County. Do you know of any specific changes in any of these counties locally?
I don't. Not anything that's not done at the state level.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Very good. So moving along here, Elise asked about mud taxes. Why aren't mud taxes included?
Because my understanding of this, and I'm not going to try to tell you exactly because I'm not an expert on it, but my understanding of it is that mud taxes are not included because they are a special taxation district and eventually they go away. So essentially you're financing a bond to put in your infrastructure and they go away. And so that's why they're not included is what I have always been told.
Okay. Excellent. Another question here. Oh,
can I tag onto that with one thing? what most people don't understand about mud taxes, and I don't want to get too in the weeds. We could do a separate episode on this probably. Um, Mud taxes are not just infrastructure. And most people think that, right? Municipal utility district, you think it's retention, sewer, water, all of that
Mm-hmm.
for these communities that aren't in a municipality. Um, when truth be told is that MUDs have a lot of flexibility and can do a number of different things. And so pay attention to who's on your mud board is what I
Mm-hmm.
would tell you. If you live in a mud, pay attention to who's on your mud board. Because for instance, you hear people get upset about low income apartment complexes. Section 8 apartment complexes are coming in, or whatever this is or
Mm-hmm.
that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mud districts have the ability, it's in their wheelhouse and in their powers that have been afforded to them. They could go buy that property and turn it into a park. There's a lot of different things that MUDs can do that most people don't realize. And so it's important to know that. And it's important to know who's actually running your mud board, because you can take things to those people, and they have regular meetings, and just like a
Mm-hmm.
city council does or anything else, they have regular meetings. It's important to know and be involved there.
Okay, great advice. Um, Rachel asked if the deadline has passed, is there still a way to protest? I have a few clients who have not received their letters in the mail as of yet.
Ooh, if they haven't received their letters in the mail as of yet, then they should pick up the phone and make a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the simple answer is kinda. You can apply homestead retroactively.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes much more difficult to protest once you've done that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wouldn't bet the farm on it. But if they're getting close to that protest deadline and they've not gotten a letter yet, I would definitely advise that they pick up the phone and call their taxing authority, because something seems wrong.
Right.
They should be. They should be. It shouldn't be something that you get like a day before the protest deadline.
Exactly. Tiffany just made a comment. I received two letters, so she got,
Oh,
she,
lucky you.
she got extra. Okay, very good.
Hopefully, one was better than the other, right?
I would hope so, but hopefully it wasn't a copy. So Natalie just said, backing up to, we were talking about the price index earlier. Where do you find the price index?
Well, so like I said, you can get very specific with this, or you can go very general. If you want to go very general, the very best place would be to pay attention to the monthly stats that come out of HAR's newsroom.
Mm-hmm.
And David Mendel and then the communication Matt Burris and the communications team do a great job in putting out all kinds of data. You can go into the MLS and pull stats for the
Mm-hmm.
year, and you can use the market viewer tool at texasrealestate.com.
Okay, very good. And people were asking about the market viewer earlier. We did post the links to that a little bit earlier in the broadcast, so scroll up in the comments if you missed that.
It
Laverne
really
is
is a
just,
phenomenal tool,
yeah.
and if you go in there and you look at the stats, and you can pull them up by month or quarter or year. You can pull them up by subdivision, by zip code, by school district, all kinds of stuff like that. But if you go up into the little hamburger menu in the top left and you open it up, there's a section there called Infographic Generator. You can take that data and actually turn it into a really great infographic for your social media.
Excellent. Okay, good advice. Laverne's just double checking here, but once the deadline is passed, it's too late, right?
Correct.
Okay. Rashonda asked, what are some of the reasons that may be accepted to get a protest extension?
Well, so one of them could be, and we saw this during COVID,
Mm,
and we saw it also post Hurricane Harvey,
mm-hmm,
is that there's difficulty in the assessment and or in the certification of the tax rolls
mm-hmm,
from the county itself. Um, Outside of that, it would have to be a pretty special circumstances to get some sort of protest extension on an individual basis. But if you're going to do that, and somebody tells them that they can get an extension, I would darn sure get that in writing.
mm-hmm. Okay. A couple of people are asking you to repeat where the infographic generator is.
So if you go to texasrealestate.com, there's a big red button that says for realtor members. And if you click on that button, you'll be amazed at the amount of information available to Realtor members.
members.
That's why it's labeled for Realtor members. And if you hover over research, you'll see Market Viewer. You click on Market Viewer, open it up. It's going to open up to Abilene because alphabetically that's our first association. You can go down to Houston, obviously. But then up in the top left-hand corner, there is the little, hamburger, we call it, menu. Open that up, and the very first thing you're going to see is Infographic Generator. Just click on it, and you'll figure it out from there.
Okay, very good. So a couple more questions here. Nishan was asking, what are your thoughts on the arbitration process?
Nishan, so I'm going to not lie to you and tell you that I'm an expert on the arbitration process. I think that that's when you bring professionals into play, whether that's a tax attorney or whether that's one of these valuation companies. That's if I get to that point, I'm getting professionals involved.
Right. That makes sense. Rubina had a question going back to the over 65 exemption here. Does it lower even further once the spouse also reaches 65, or is it just applied once?
My understanding, Rubina, is that it's just applied once.
All right. Very good. So Terry was asking about a class. She was specifically asking about classes that teach about property tax protesting. But you have another solution for a class for the members that are tuned in. Will you tell us a little bit about the PSA class?
Yeah, so I'm not, to answer the question, I'm not 100% sure that a protesting taxes class exists. Certainly not at the association level, I don't believe, unless you know something I don't, Christina. And I don't think at the state level either. I've never heard of that. It may be something that a title company would put on or something like that, but I've never heard of one. But my favorite class to teach, and what I genuinely believe is the most practically applicable class that NAR has put together, is a class called the Pricing Strategy Advisor, PSA certification. And it really is a deep dive in how to properly price homes. And obviously the application from the standpoint of what we're talking about today is being able to pull comps and being able to look at the true value of a property when it comes to protesting taxes. But whether you're trying to run a magic 8-ball over the current market that we've got and what the real pricing is on a home and how do you protect your buyer from a potential downturn? How do you make sure you're getting the most for your seller? The PSA class is it's phenomenal. I love teaching it because I really believe that there's just about everything in that class can be taken immediately and put into your business. And I know that we've got one coming up. The beautiful and talented Tina Wilshire is teaching it, I think, June 1st, right?
Yeah, it's coming up
June 1st, and then I teach it in August, I think August 3rd, something like that. But it's a great class. I highly recommend, if you look at what our clients tell us, and there is a report that you should look at if you're listening to this and you have a real estate license. Late October, early November of every year, there's a report that comes out from the National Association of Realtors called the Profile of Buyers and Sellers. And you should look at it. If you're not a data nerd and you don't want to sift through 100 pages of data, there's a really great executive summary that's like 4 or 5 pages, right? Just read that. But this is our clients telling us exactly what they want from their realtor, what they liked about their experience, what they didn't like about their experience, all these different things. And one of the things that they really rely upon us for is making sure that they don't make a mistake by either selling their home too low or buying too high. And so if you are sitting in a living room with somebody and you're trying to get them to choose you, the fact that you have specialized education in making sure that they're not going to make that mistake is a real way to differentiate yourself and win more business.
That is excellent advice. So thank you again for that. And we did share a link, to the PSA Pricing Strategies Advisor certification in the comments. So thank you for that. And Tiffany commented, Cliff's Notes, brilliant. Thank you. So yes, we appreciate that. Well, Chance, again, you always share so much information when you come on our program. Is there anything else that you want to share with our members today?
No, I think, if there's anything else that I would share is as we come upon the deadline to protest in most of the counties out there, if you haven't taken a second and just reach out to the clients that you sold a home to in the last 15 months, just to talk to them, make sure they understand that deadline is coming up, make sure they have actually applied for their homestead exemption if you that wasn't part of your business plan before. Mm-hmm. It's a great opportunity just to touch base, see how things are going, ask for a referral, obviously, and just have a customer touch point and build your business.
Excellent. And just one comment that HAR actually posted, we have offered a property tax protesting what you really need to know class in the past. We will look at offering this course early each year going forward. So there you go. Here at the local level, we'll be doing that. So excellent.
Love it.
Well, Chance, again, thank you so much for your time today. We truly appreciate it. Our members are thanking you in the comments, saying this was awesome. They really appreciate your advice and everything that you shared today. So again, thank you.
Nope, always a pleasure. Thank you, Christina.
Absolutely. So that is it for this Member Focus Monday. Next Monday is Memorial Day, so we will not have a Member Focus Monday next week, but we will be back at the beginning of June. So be sure to tune in then. We hope you all have a great Memorial Day week and weekend, and stay safe, everybody. Have a good week. Bye, Chance.
Bye. Have a great day.